Well met. This has been Brode, and you're watching Born to be
Cosmo.
Oh, snap.
Welcome to Born to be Cosmo, a twice monthly podcast where we discuss all things Snap. I am joined by my fabulous and talented co-hosts, NateWolfe and ZombiesGoNomNom. It has been an eventful 2 weeks since we last had the pleasure of each other's company, so without delay, I propose we dive right in.
Very good. Yeah, welcome back and excited to be here all at the same time.
Yeah, a lot of interesting stuff to talk about this week.
Yeah, I will preface this as a slight warning to chat. We aim to take a balanced approach with the podcast, meaning that we call bouquets when we see them, but we're not afraid to throw brickbats at things that we don't like. And there's going to be a few of those tonight. So I caution you that I don't think that we're going to be unfair, but there's a few things that I think are going to have we're going to have some hot takes on. So now that warning is out of the way, let's talk about the thing that's on everyone's mind. Not balance, it's bundles. Bundles. There's no secret that Snap likes to sell you stuff. March was a very big month insofar as that they offered probably numerically the most bundles ever. And, with April this month, there is still a lot of bundles, and we're going to talk about them, but maybe not as many as in March. And, this is a conversation point that everyone talks a lot about, because how do you best use your resources if you're not going to be a whale and buy every bundle, right? What is the correct bundle to get if you're trying to spend a limited amount of money, or if you're free to play, which ones should you be saving your gold for? There's a lot of, in my opinion, tantalizing bundles on offer this month for those who feel their wallets need to be unburdened of its money. So, diving right in, I want to just give a shout out to SnapZone. We're borrowing their graphic to show how they've kind of qualitatively and quantitatively weighted the bundle value. They have the best graphics, and we use them often on the show because it helps us convey our talking points more clearly. I just want to give them full credit and thank them for allowing us to use them and being so graceful about it. So
they're great. They're a very good resource. Highly recommend.
Yeah, Kira Loss is the one who does all the graphic stuff for these like infographics, and they do a great job with it.
So I've just linked in chat a hyperlink to the April SnapZone bundle guide. Something to reference, including this chart where there's a little bit more context. So, talking about the bundles, right now there's a bundle on offer, Throg of Thunder. you gotta give them credit for the names. This bundle is presently available in the shop right now, and it's selling for 7,000 gold, which is approximately $100 US.
A little less, right? Because $100 is 8k gold.
Slightly.
It's a little less, but yeah, it's almost there.
Or 140 CAD again for 8k gold.
So let me get this straight, right? Like, when was the last time Thor was playable? Okay, it's been a while. I mean, Thor is okay. Thor is okay, right? I know he's playable. I know we see like the Lockjaw decks and stuff, and he's okay. But what I'm really getting here, right, is a cosmetic for a card that is okay. I'm getting a bunch of credits, and I'm getting 50% of a tier 5 card, pool 5 card, for $100. So a variant, some credits, and half a card for $100. And I just
the math on it too with like what you open, and so roughly, like if you factor in that credits into like token, I think usually it comes out to like 4,500 ish. So it's like it's 75% of a card.
Dude, I usually don't spend a lot of money in this game, and I bought a whole bunch of bundles last month because I was token farming for Galactus. I really wanted Galactus, and I finally got it, but I think I capped out at like the $20 one because it's just it's very pricey for what you get.
It gets expensive quickly.
It does, and waiting is very difficult, especially I think for our generation. It's like nobody wants to wait, right? I can wait for my daily quests, but like and for a while there I was spending all of my gold to get more quests, to get more credits, to progress on the track, but I stopped doing that because now there's these Token Tuesdays and I'd rather just save the gold for that.
Yeah, that's the move.
But
especially
then like
where you're at with like being done with Pool 3, that's kind of where you want to be parking your gold. You want to put it into the Token Tuesdays if you're like trying to get tokens for cards, and then just kind of save the rest if you can, for because that way, even if you're not spending money to get gold, eventually you will be able to afford these bundles. Like that's one thing I saw a lot of, is like you get a lot of people understandably saying, wow, like these bundles are really expensive, and yes, they are. But then there are also quite a few people who are like, yeah, but I'm not buying it with money. Like I've been saving my gold for like a month or two, and it just added up. I think it takes a little bit more than that. Maybe it's like 2 to 3 months. I don't know the exact. I think I read somewhere free to play gets roughly like 2K ish gold a month, maybe a little bit more if you're like climb into 90 and get that bonus 500. So like it adds up. And I mean that's great if you can just like save up, but when they're doing a big bundle a month, you got to like pick and choose, right? Because you're not going to be able to get all of them without ponying up some money.
There are 3 kinds of bundles I've noticed. And like I've seen this kind of emerge over time. You've got the like whale bundles that, you know, are a little bit more dubious in terms of value. And the weightings here are not going to be representative of my view, which is kind of interesting. So this is just purely my opinion and perspective. So the Throg of Thunder bundle is the whale bundle, right? It's the most expensive one. And then you've got these mid-range ones that are kind of in the middle. The tokens is kind of like the token example of this, where you get less, but you get more value out of it. And then you've got the smaller bundles, which are seemingly the best value, but in absolute terms, you get the least amount of stuff. And they seem to be really kind of, every bundle's falling into one of these 3 kind of buckets. And I think Throg is the whale bundle, right? Like it's going to appeal. Like, so I buy most of the bundles. This is one that I might end up skipping. I'm really on the fence on this one.
I mean, I like it. I think it's awesome. And it goes like the Animal-Avengers, so we can look at the other bundle as well, but like, or the Aww-Vengers. They're wonderful, but it's like $100, man. And could I spend $100 like twice a week or once a week on this one game? Like, no way.
Yeah, it can get expensive. It's an interesting thing where it's like, so like where I'm at, I don't have a full collection, but if I wanted to have a full collection, I could buy the last 3 cards I'm missing. I'm just not ponying up tokens for them because I don't need them. But I find the credits are still appealing to me because I like going for splits.
Yeah.
And you can never have enough credits going for splits. Going for the cool like ink or gold stuff. And then it's especially cool if you do that on a new variant you like. The variant definitely influences my decision a lot of the time.
Yeah, I wanted to showcase your Cosmo variant.
I can send that.
It's really nice. And how long did it take you to get that? I think
that was I'd only split Cosmo twice. So that was actually, I rolled on a split for ink and I missed, and that was the first chance I had at getting gold, and I actually got it first try, which was like, I've had pretty good luck with splits overall. Actually, the artist, Rian Gonzalez, she posted about like, hey, if you get this in game, post it. So I posted over there, and I got a reply from her, which is cool.
Oh,
She's
nice.
a great artist.
Oh yes, absolutely.
It's really good. Here, let me send it to you.
Yeah, it's beautiful with the gold background. Like, oh my gosh. So okay, yeah, sweet. I'll pull it up here on the screen.
Oh wait, is the mouse clicking going through? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it is.
Sorry.
Busted for multitasking.
I know, right?
Don't
I
worry
wasn't sure how loud it was.
it was audible. I didn't realize it was a mouse, but then when Nate mentioned, like, is that you clicking? And I'm like, oh yeah, someone is clicking.
I didn't see my little I didn't see the thing in what's it called? I didn't see the Discord thing going off, so I was like, it must not be picking up sound. Probably was.
Over the last few weeks,
Busted.
yeah, over the last few weeks, the audio suppressor on Discord's been really weird. Like, for example, when I'm not on the headset and I use the two-way speaker, if I'm playing music through it, it never picks up. Now, every second or third day, it does pick up. So Discord's been very odd.
Oh,
Yeah,
I can't use it because I have the mixer and like it Discord's audio like suppression goofs with the mixer, so I just disable it. But whatever. Look at this beautiful weird Cosmo here with the gold background with the little purple borders. Like, oh,
that is my gosh. My favorite Cosmo variant is the one on the bottom right corner of the screen for those watching. It's the Luca Claretti Cosmo, Scooby-Doo in space. But the Rianne one,
yeah,
it's a close second, if not edging it out. They're both really good variants. You gotta get gold Cosmo with the gold Kirby Crackle now. That's your next.
It's only gonna cost you 8 bazillion tokens.
Yeah, well, you can keep buying those whale bundles and getting those credits, and you're good to go. So the bundle's pricey. The cosmetic is great. 3,000 tokens is a nice bump, but it's not a full card. I don't know. I think this is
they have zero shame about like just the level of like
there were some bundles last month that were objectively worse than this one in terms of like relative value for what you were paying for.
Like this one isn't like a bad bundle, and it's kind of similar to the Apocalypse one. It's not quite as value. The Apocalypse bundle I think still is the best value big bundle we've gotten, that and like Sunspot, but this one was good overall. They basically they kind of factor the fact that it's a pool 3 card into these things a little bit, because like for a portion of the player base, this is essentially giving them, I like to call it like early access to a card, because you're still going to open the card on your track, but if you don't have Thor and you want Thor, this is a way to get him right away without having to use your free Series 3 card a month or whatever, right?
Yeah, and now with that change, getting Series 3 cards from the shop is a lot.
You only get one premium a month now, right?
Yeah.
So it's like there's a little bit more, I guess, artificial value there. Also, for people like doing the splits, it's always nice that you get the boosters. Like I've always said, boosters have no inherent value, but like to me, if it's a card I'm already going for a split, I'm not buying it for the boosters, but the boosters kind of push me over the edge sometimes, because it means like, oh, I can just split it immediately and have a chance to gamble on inked or gold, and they probably have gotten more of my money than I'm happy to admit because of that.
All right, chat. We're gonna talk for a moment. Like Zombies isn't here right now, so what Zombies is saying is nobody cares about boosters except for split whales, like Zombies. Oh, you're back. Well, anyways, I'll be honest. If there wasn't any Hearthstone pre-orders going on right now, I probably would have bought this already. It's just I can't get everything, and I'm kind of on the fence. But it is a great variant and avatar, and I would say, however, if you are a gold saver and you're looking to buy a bundle with gold this month, I would not recommend this one. I would recommend one of the ones we'll be reviewing later. A split whale. That's you, Zombies.
I wish that were me.
Yeah, that's I don't know. You gotta put a Jeff the Shark or like a whale head on.
Oh gosh, Jeff the Shark, yes. On the Van Damme. Yes. I love it.
All right. Well, moving on to the next bundle.
Oh yeah,
this one is currently available in the shop as well. Not for quite as long as the Throg of Thunder. This is the Aww-Vengers bundle. And this one is quite a bit less expensive. This is the value bundle that I was talking about.
$95 less expensive.
For $5 US, and you have to spend money on this one. You can't get it with gold, or I think it was like what, $7 in the Canadian store. You get 3 cosmetics, 35 boosters for each of the cards, and also avatars for each of them as well. And are any of these cards pool 3? I don't think they are.
No, they're all pool 1 or pool. I think they're actually all pool 1.
They're all pool 1. Now, I bought this bundle without thinking the second it hit the shop. I like the silly cosmetics. This one was inexpensive. I would say that Mooster Fantastic alone is worth the price of admission, although I'm quite partial to the Cookie Jar Ant-Man. And if I was playing Captain America in a deck, I probably would play Captain Americat. I like these a lot. Funny enough, I haven't asked why yet, but most people have either been indifferent to this or been quite positive about it, except for a friend of the show, Safety Blade, who for whatever reason reviles these cosmetics.
Really?
I see him on Twitter. Yeah, I see him on Twitter like, don't buy this. It's a bad deal. There was one person who was like saying like, is this worth $8 Canadian? And he's like, how much is a coffee in Canada? Because that's probably worth it more than this. And it's like, whoa.
That's funny. I didn't know.
I don't know why. Maybe
so
he doesn't like the cute things as much. But I thought this is one of those gimmies, right? They're buying goodwill with this bundle. Although interestingly enough, unlike the Jubilee bundle, which this reminds me quite a bit of, there's no it's just
no
the
progression. Yeah,
no progression. Yeah.
It's interesting that like they do basically at least one of these a month, or it's like a higher value, cheaper price type of thing. This is the first one where it's. Yeah, there's not direct progression on this one, but the value on the cosmetics is higher, right? Because you're getting 3 of them. Where like what you're buying normally one cosmetic in the store for like 700 gold or like $10-ish, a bit less if you buy,
What do you mean by direct progression?
Like no gold, no tokens, no credits. Right? This bundle is just variants and it gives you some boosters. Whereas like some of the other value bundles, like Blue mentioned the Jubilee one, that one gave you some credits and some gold alongside it. So I feel like this is just them continuing to kind of experiment a bit, right? Like they want to see, well, we know people are going to buy, the super value one if it comes with a good variant and, more value than normal for like credits or gold or whatever. But how many people are going to buy it if we just put a bunch of cool variants in it for a cheap price? So it feels like they're still they do a lot of that, right? Like they're kind of testing the waters to see, gauging the interest on something like this, and
it's a good deal. Good. I mean, I'm not super partial to them for whatever reason. Like they don't tickle my fancy, but they're it's such a good deal that like I'm tempted to anyways. But like with no progression, right? There's like not that upside where it's like, well, I could use the gold for this, or I could use the credits for upgrades. Yeah. So I see this and it's like, well, they're cute, but like, I don't know that
to how much you use the cards too, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing is, I think there are a decent amount of players in the game who just don't play with these cards very much because they're kind of archetype specific, right? Like Blue mentioned, Captain America doesn't see very much play outside of pool 1, pool 2.
I've seen a lot of Ant-Man lately.
Yeah, he sees quite a bit of play in Zoo decks, in like Valkyrie decks. Not the most popular card, but a good card and a somewhat relevant card. And then Mr. Fantastic's probably the most relevant. Like he's always been kind of a staple in the good
cute,
card
though.
shells. And he is the best variant. Like Mr. Fantastic's hilarious. Like that's the one I was buying this for personally.
Yeah. Your mileage will vary with this, beauty being in the eye of the beholder. Like Safety Blade and I are the complete opposite end of the spectrum in terms of what graphics we like. But I think this one's going to be pretty popular. I saw quite a few of the avatars on ladder today when I was playing, so people are picking it up. Again, is this good value? Well, it really comes down to, do you like the cosmetics or not? Because it's a FOMO thing. It's going to add nothing to your game. And likely they won't be available for some time, if ever again. So,
I always wonder when there's bundles like I love the the variant from that Apocalypse bundle that I never bought because it was so expensive. And then every time I see somebody playing it, I'm like, man, I kind of wish I bought that, but like it was really expensive. And I wonder if they're ever going to be available again. And like, I don't know. I guess we'll see.
I think maybe, but probably not for a long time. Like it would be surprising to me if I think they've said that before too. I'm not 100% positive, but I'm pretty sure people have asked about this and they're basically like, we don't have any plans at this time to bring back variants from bundles. But
They
it's
will
not
at some
outside
point.
the
Like,
realm of possibility, right? Like it's like they could come back in the future, but they're not gonna. We know they're not gonna just randomly end up in the store. Like if they come back. They'll probably come back in the bundle again.
I
know.
bet they do what Hearthstone did, right? Hearthstone kind of like got this to us. It took them a long time to get there, but they released the cosmetic, and then like a year later, it came back.
yeah,
For like a little bit less, and then eventually they just kind of said, they dropped it in the
Yeah, you could like
craft.
get
well,
it.
why not? Because it's like
crafting.
it was a one-time like cash grab, but if they, and you got to let it be exclusive for long enough so people don't feel like they got ripped off, but like give it a year or something, and then release it. It's like printing money, right? I mean, and then all the people like me that wish that they bought it, like, oh, it's available again, I better get it.
Yeah. It's all about maximizing the FOMO, right? Like I know I've seen quite a few people who are like, oh, I started playing a little late and I'm bummed I didn't get the Sarah Angela one. Because that was like a really popular one. But like I'm sure they'll probably come back in the future, but I wouldn't expect it anytime soon. Like they've got feels like they've got a lot of other stuff on their plate they want to focus on. And then specifically about variants, like anyone who's been on like Snap Zone or Snap Fan and has looked at all the unreleased variants, they are swimming in unreleased variants.
Oh,
there are so many.
It makes sense though,
That aren't
right?
even out
Because the artists have to work way ahead of time to do the art assets, and so they'll wait until there's a time they do a bundle or whatever it is. But I like that because ideally, I mean, my dream here is to make a full deck with like all of the same style, whether it's Venom or don't hate me, but Pixels or Dan Hipp, or whatever it is. But like, I love the synchronicity, if that's the right word, of having them all
match up.
Yeah, and maybe that's just a personality quirk, but like I like the matchiness of it all.
Yeah, it's like getting, a full gold deck or a full ink deck, or it's nice to have that kind of unison in everything matching.
Yeah.
Yeah, ThinJ in the chat makes a good point that there's a backlog of stuff they need to re-release, like the beta stuff.
Yeah.
If they make good on that promise, which I don't see why they wouldn't.
Yeah, they talked about that kind of recently. Actually, I'm sure it sounds like it's going to be coming sometime this year. We don't know like soon, but I think within the last month they said they're working on, how they're going to make that stuff available.
Cool.
So that should give us some insights into how things might get re-released. So that'll be interesting.
Well,
all right.
Here's the next was the Token Tuesday, right? And I'll go through it kind of quickly, but to kind of cap out the bundles, we were talking about these, but the Token Tuesdays are back in April. So we just had one this past week, and it looks like they're doing them every Tuesday in April. So it's a good opportunity for people who were relatively free to play or everyone else to get some collector's tokens at a relatively reasonable rate, pay for them in-game gold, and like the amount of tokens that you get for the gold is pretty good. So the next Token Tuesday is scheduled for April the 11th, which is 450 collector's tokens and 15 boosters for 450 gold, which is great. I mean, it's like an extra collector's cache, or several depending on what type you open. But I really like it. So yeah, and so right, I guess that this was released as a stopgap to the feedback from the player base that the Series 5 cards are too expensive. And so this is a way to get collector's tokens outside of collector's cash pack openings. So I don't know.
It's more accessible too, right? Even if you're not... No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, let me go get my trombone so I can make that trombone noise.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that it addresses the concern. Well, it tries to address the concern about how difficult it is to get the cards, not the price, because the price is still, the price is still the price. Sorry, zombies, go ahead.
I was just saying it's kind of nice because this is something where it's like you can kind of get these without having to like wail out super hard, just by like on one hand you are burning through more of your gold than like if you're trying to save for some of the bigger bundles. But if you're just trying to get a card in like the short term, these are pretty value in terms of like, oh, maybe I'll get Galactus or Thanos like a week or two sooner, which can make a big difference, especially when it's like just gold you'd have kind of sitting there. You'd rather have it be a card you want to try out.
I mean, that's
or a
how
new
I
card too. Like
that's
a
how I
new
got
Series
both
5 card.
Thanos and Galactus. I mean, it was through these Token Tuesday bundles. I mean, they help significantly anyways, because I'm still open. I'm not tracking them, but like the collector's caches, it's like 100, 100, 400, 100, 100. Every once, I think I got 600 once. And it's just the progression feels kind of slow. So whatever you can do to like push it a little bit. And as somebody who's still missing some of the pool 5 cards, I guess some of the pool 4 and 5 cards, I absolutely hate getting the art variants in the shop. I'm like, oh, that's really cool, but like I'd rather unlock the card. So can you like, I wish I had a separate shop for that.
Yeah, that's getting separated in.
Is that we already talked about that, right? But I was.
Yeah, that's coming in like 10 days. The next patch.
Yeah, that'll be great.
So that'll be good. Pool 4 and 5 will have their own section. The cosmetic will have their own section. I actually have the White Queen one in my shop, and I was thinking about doing one of those.
I really like it. The Venom one, so cool.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing one of those silly Twitter things where it's like, 1,500 people like this, and you got to make it high for 5K.
Yeah, I saw Lee do it last week with the Galactus and the white and gold Galactus. If one person likes this, I'll buy it.
Yeah, I did it with it was like, what was it? Noir Coulson, and there's this really cool Electra one where it's like I couldn't justify these on my own, but we turn it into a little bit of engagement farming, and people get a kick out of it, and they're cool variants. Like I wanted them. So I ended up doing that, and I thought about doing it for the White Queen, but then I was like, let me go look up what White Queen variants there are. And I already have the Archer one, which I like a lot, but man, there are some really, really good unreleased White Queen ones. So I'm just like, as much as I love the Venomized stuff, because that is one of my favorite things in the game, and like Nate, I'd love to build like a full Venomized deck someday or something. It's just like 5K. That's like most of a new card, and especially when you're doing content on the game, it's like I need to be responsible and save it, even though I'm sitting on like 25,000 or something.
Did I tell you I bought the Venomized Killmonger? That's the rule, right? If it's in the shop and you don't buy it, and then you regret not buying it next time it comes in the shop, like you have to.
It doesn't show up again for like another 4 months or something. A lot of the time, unless it's one you don't want, then you see it a lot.
I think it was Armord in our Discord posted what is it, 5 out of the 6 variants in the shop were pixel variants. It was like, no, get them out of here.
And they have said they want to do, in I think the not too distant future, I think they understand that they're leaving a lot of money on the table with the current implementation of the shop. Like for variant whales like myself and Blue, it's like I'd probably be throwing more money at them if they were actually giving me the stuff I wanted. Like it took me like 5 or 6 months for Chibi armor to show up, and I checked the shop every single day. That's silly. Like I get it. They're doing the whole little, you want to check once a day so you can open the app and whatnot, but like they've talked about doing a more personalized shop, and I think that would be a really great thing, and it would probably just be better for everybody. Like more people would see what they want and they would get more money. It's really a win-win.
So as an interesting segue, the next bundle actually is them trying to address that a little bit. So a lot of people say like, hey, I like Chibis, or I like the Dan Hipp cards, like any chance that we'll be able to get those targeted. And so this bundle is called the Artist Showcase for Dan Hipp. And this is the first explicit artist showcase, although they've kind of done them implicitly. But this is the first one that's really kind of using Dan Hipp as a selling point. It is unfortunate because this bundle, while it does seem to fall into that mid-range area, the value on this is particularly low. So this is not a bundle that I would recommend for someone who's trying to min-max their economy. But what you do get are 2 cosmetics for 2 highly played and loved cards, Devil Dinosaur and Moon Girl from Dan Hipp. You also get 2,000 credits and enough boosters to split them once a piece, and you get the avatar as well. So this is a bundle that I would recommend not purchasing, but it's one that I am going to personally be purchasing the second it gets released because I like Dan Hipp art a lot. Those are Dan Hipp babies and chibis are kind of like the universal 3 kind of buckets of variants that I like to get. And I think for Moon Girl and Devil Dino, these are probably my two favorites.
Oh my god, the Dan Hipp art is great, and like
it is.
I play a lot on mobile, whether it's my phone or the tablet, mostly on like the iPad. But Dan Hipp's art is so, I don't even know how to describe it, right? But it's like it's like big, chonky, cartoony, like whimsical art.
Yeah.
And that's part of the beauty of it. But I think some of these cards, like we'll look at in a minute, the Earth Day bundles and stuff, like when you get into these intricate details on these small cards, like you just can't see them unless you click and zoom and all this stuff. But like these things are just, they're big and they're vibrant and I love them. And there's so many Dan Hipp artwork cards and more coming that like, this I think inches towards my dream of like building a deck with all of the same style of art here. And so I will be purchasing these ones for sure.
Yeah, these are good.
Oh, you too.
I like I'm torn because I think the Dino's good, but I have like 2 different Dinos I really like. But the Moon Girl I think is the best Moon Girl by like a lot. So I might end up just caving for that. And like I mentioned before, hey, this has Devil Dinosaur boosters, and I'm still trying to get an ink or a gold dino because I haven't got one yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've split them like 6 or 7 times, but
Wow.
that's one of the cards that's been elusive for me. I haven't gotten I got a gold Crackle background, which is cool, but like
It's on like a foil.
If it's not gold or not inked, it's just like it's not it for me. So
insert whale noises here.
I know, right?
If it's not gold or inked, I don't want it.
Yeah, I got 2 inked dinos. I've got the Savage Land one, which
I love that
one.
one.
I liked it. It's probably a bundle I shouldn't have bought. And the ultra rare one, the one where he's kind of like you see him from the top and he's spun around, kind of looking up. I've got that one inked, but as much as I like those 2, and I do, this one just kind of takes the cake. So I'll be rocking this one as soon as I get it. So yeah, this one's going to cost gold, 2,900 gold.
I'm afraid to ask how much that translates to cash money.
Well,
$41 is what the snap chart says.
So not cheap. Moving on to the next bundle. This one I'm sure some people will be quite excited for. This one didn't really excite me. The Earth 616 Earth Day bundle. This one's going to sell for cash money, not gold. $10 US or probably around 16 Canadian. You two can celebrate Earth Day in style with Swinging Groot and Gardening Hella variants. Not exactly the type of activity I would expect Hella to be doing, but
that's why it's so great.
And everything goes. Yeah,
it's so awkward, and
because she's the goddess of death, right? And so her trying to garden and the plants dying is pretty hilarious.
Yeah. This one's pretty decent from a value perspective. You get the 2 variants, 600 gold, 600 credits, 35 boosters for each, and an avatar for each. This one's probably big pass for me. I do like the Groot, but Groot is like unplayable even after the buff.
If Groot was even remotely playable, I would consider it. But like,
this is the thing, right? It's funny. I think that if you really like it still, you probably should get it, because we're going to be touching on this a little bit later, but with the past buffs that have been made and the new balance philosophy, for all we know, Groot could be a meta card in 6 months. You just never know. And actually, I got rewarded. The beast, the Hipp beast, popped up in my shop a couple months ago, and I was like,
one.
I really like this, but this card is really bad. I bought it impulse, and now I'm feeling pretty good that I have it, because Beast is centerpiece of a reasonably decent archetype balance. So I'm not trying to talk you into spending money needlessly, but it's I wouldn't. I think that there's always the possibility that a card will be very different, or the meta will be very different down the road.
Well, and we've talked about it before, where I think that there's a couple of different lanes that players land in. Some of them are more competitive, and some of them view this more as like a collection type of thing. Like a lot of the comic book collectors, right? This is a variant. Yeah. It's like a variant cover. Like, I want this for my collection. I like Groot. I've seen people play on ladder Guardians of the Galaxy decks just because it's a cute meme that you're playing all the Galaxy or the Guardians of the Galaxy in the same deck, right?
It's fun.
And I like the idea that, hey, I could collect, if it's, say Groot's my favorite character, right? I could collect every time there's a Groot, I'm just going to get it because I really like Groot. It's not me personally, but like if my favorite character's in here, or there's a thing like these Jim Lee variants were super nostalgic for me, or when I see Angel, like Angel's a crappy card, but when I see the Archangel variant, I'm like, oh, I really like Archangel. This is really cool. Maybe I should get that. So there's the collection aspect of it, that even if you're not going to play it, being able to have it as part of your collection to showcase can be kind of cool.
Yeah, there's value there, right? Like, and that's one thing I really wish they leaned into their cosmetics a bit more heavily when it comes to, they say they want everyone to have like a unique collection. The variants do a great job of accomplishing this. Like, people have very different collections because, even if you're not someone who's going out of your way to buy variants, you get them randomly, right? So like you end up with a decent amount of them over time, even if you're not buying them. And I wish they would have leaned into that more for the unique collection stuff rather than messing with card progression to accomplish that. Because, like, I'm going to buy this one just for the Hela. Like, Hela's like a guilty pleasure deck of mine. When I was in Pool 3, it was the deck I wanted so badly. And I wanted it so badly in beta because it was like, there were points in beta where the Hela deck was quite good because, like, some of the discard cards were, like, more ridiculous. Like, Unnerved Hellcow at 2 mana, and Lady Sif used to be a 2 cost, and it just used to be a Ghost Rider used to be 3. It used to be a stronger deck than it is now. And I love Reanimation, and like I've always liked those style of decks in Magic and whatnot. So I wanted it for so long, and then by the time I got it, I didn't get it to like, I don't know, like a while after full release. And it wasn't very good then, but Blue knows the Agatha Hela deck. That deck is a hoot. It's so much fun to play that deck. It's just like you're kind of just Ben Brode laugh, the embracing the randomness, and it's just fun. And I think for a for fun style deck, like this is very much a variant I would run in there. Complement my Pixel Agatha.
And these are both Pool 3 cards, so this also could accelerate the transition.
Groot is
out of
Pool 3?
I think
no.
So. No, but Hela is.
Yeah, Hela is for sure, yeah.
Groot's, I think, Pool 1.
Okay.
All right, here's another one. This is a beautiful variant. I love this, the Squirrel Girl one.
Well, this bundle is really interesting. It's called the Tokens, which is a bit of a clever pun because Squirrel Girl is like the token card that like every card is like a token. It puts the 2 squirrels in, but also for 5,000 gold or about 71 US or 100 CAD. You acquire this bundle and you get a lot of tokens, 4,500 collector tokens for 5,000 gold. If I'm not mistaken, is, relatively speaking, all things being relative, the best value for collector tokens that they've offered. So if you were saving up your gold and you wanted to get the best value for that gold token wise, I think that this is probably what you've been saving for. You get 4,500 tokens, the Rian Gonzalez variant, which is quite a good one, obviously, as we look at it. Enough boosters to split it with 155, and an avatar to go with it. I mean, this is pretty much the closest you're going to get to insta getting a pool 5 card off of a single purchase. Of course, you're 1,500 tokens short, but you do, it does accelerate that quite a bit. It's funny how like they're never going to like offer 6,000 collected tokens in a bundle. It's like they can't quite get to that point. But
yeah.
I still can't believe that we're normalizing paying nearly $100 for one card. Like,
it's pretty crazy. It's so the weird thing about it, right, is, and this is something I'm sure a lot of people don't know, and it's something I still want to cover in like a YouTube video for all the post-launch players, but originally they wanted card acquisition essentially after Pool 3 to be kind of gacha. They kind of wanted this to be more of a gacha game than like a purely card game. And they implemented a system for that with like loot boxes and random pulls, and that was going to be the way you got new cards. Now, eventually,
oh man,
eventually you were going to get access to the card and whatnot. But the thing is, when you have your beta being comprised of all card game focused people, they're not really going to take that lying down, because all of us pretty much saw, hey, yeah, maybe this new card you're releasing right now isn't overpowered and it's not going to break the game, and it wasn't even that great at the time. But we see where this is going. And it's only a matter of time until they release, now we see like a Thanos or a Galactus or what other card that ends up having, or a Shuri that has a huge impact on the meta. And if the only way to get it is these bi-weekly loot box events where the math was even more ridiculous than it is now. I think roughly you would have to spend like over $100 to get one of the things. And the crazy part was they would put 2 cards in at a time, right? So they'd put a new card, and then they put a Series 3 card in that you could get if you didn't have it already. Because this is a time where nobody was like Series 3 complete. So they put in Jane Foster and Destroyer. There was also a cosmetic for each. So if you didn't have Destroyer, you could put in that, $100. Now you could high roll and maybe get it sooner, but the odds were not in your favor. And so but there was a pity timer. So if you hit the pity at like $100 or whatever it was, you would get one of the cards, right? And if you already had the card, there was a variant for each of them in there. Now, can you imagine you pony up $100 and then you get a skin for the Destroyer that you already have instead of the card you're going for?
That's a lot of money. Like,
yeah,
that's a lot of money. And this is like, I don't know, as somebody who like is an adult with a full-time job and all of that, like, okay, I can pump a little bit of money into this game, whatever. But like, I'm also old, right? Like, can your average like 20 something who's, working full time or go to school or whatever, like afford to pump in $100 for one card? Like, it just seems so expensive.
And this was going to be
me.
every 2 weeks. This was going to be every 2 weeks. And
that's absurd,
$100, it was more expensive, right? Because you weren't guaranteed the card at $100. You could, let's say you didn't have Destroyer. You could roll Destroyer, then you could roll a skin for him, and then you'd finally get the card after. So people did the math, and if you wanted, I don't know if it was if you wanted to guarantee the card or if you wanted to guarantee both of the cards that were in there, it was gonna be like in the $200 to $300 range a month of spending, at least. And so it was kind of crazy. There was a lot of backlash. I'm sure people have heard about it. I mean, there's even a title in game referencing it. I survived Nexus events. It really did almost kill the game in beta. That's why I quit. And even though they rolled it back and they changed things and whatnot, that put me off of the game until near launch, because I was just like, I kind of saw the writing on the wall and how they wanted to monetize the game. And that was back when I was still doing Hearthstone and some other stuff. So I was already paying money for other card games, and Snap was a casual thing for me. So I wasn't interested in. I spent a grand total of I think $15 in the beta. I spent like almost no money in the beta, and it was just like a fun little casual game I played. But this is how they reinvented it, right? Like the Pool 5 system, they basically are like, hey, we understand we can't get away with the full on gotcha stuff we initially planned. So you get a card a month, you get a free new card every month. But if you want more than that, you got to start ponying up the big bucks. It seems to be the system they've settled on.
Well,
speaking of ponying up money for cards.
Yeah. So just before we move on to talk about Kitty Pryde, there is one other bundle that will be available this month, the Team Cat, Team Dog bundle. We opted not to include it because while we know it's coming, the particulars haven't been data mined yet, so we don't really know beyond some vague.
I think it's just credits and a title, from what I've heard. It's just
but
it's cheap. It's a title for either Team Cat or Team Dog, and it's a slightly above rate on if you were to buy credits.
It was suggested that perhaps it might change with the next patch, but who knows?
It could. It very well could. But most of in the past, they have changed bundles before, but that hasn't happened in a long time. Like pretty much, for the most part, bundles haven't really changed after they've been data mined since I think like December. So I wouldn't expect it to change. It's not really it's basically these type of bundles I think just exist for, hey, this is to appeal to the people who are already paying money for gold. You get a slightly better value, and we throw in a little bonus of, I mean, I think the title's kind of cute. There's a chance I get the Team Dog one because I'm an enjoyer of dogs.
Oh, wait a minute. You don't get you don't get to pick?
No, they're two different ones.
I
so
see.
it's like a flat, I don't know the rate, but it's a small amount of credits, but it's more than if you were to spend that same dollar amount in
buy
gold.
both if you want, if that's what
you can buy both. Yeah, they're two different ones, and it's Team Cat and Team Dog, and all it is you just get credits at a bit above rate, and you get a title that says Team Cat or Team Dog.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's going to be coming towards the end of the month. But not to trample on Nate's segue, speaking of money and acquisition, late last month, on March 28th, a highly anticipated Series 5 card was released to the pantheon of heroes and villains that make up Marvel Snap, Kitty Pryde. I was very excited for Kitty Pryde. A lot of people were, and I bought Kitty Pryde the moment she was released. I rigged my store because we don't have like the new like featured hero thingamajig yet. So I rigged my store that the second it released, she'd rotate in, and that happened. And I bought her right away, and I started playing with Kitty. And just as a reminder for those who don't remember what Kitty does, because well, we'll explain why you probably forgot in a moment. She is a 1 cost, 0 power hero that can return to your hand once a turn, and then when played, post return, gains +2 power. So she fits this niche slot in deck building as a scaling 1-drop, although mechanically different than Sunspot, similar in terms of what you're trying to accomplish in terms of your game plan. Now, I got Kitty right away, and Zombies and I were playing some games together, and it was interesting because played a game and hotly contested game, and then on turn 6, my opponent just didn't do anything, and we were confused. Well, maybe they got disconnected, or maybe they thought I wasn't infinite yet because I wasn't using an infinite card back, and they were donating cubes. Who knows? Very odd. Didn't think much of it. And then it happened again and again and again. Now, it turns out what was happening was I was not only crashing the game for my opponent by playing Kitty Pryde, I was also preventing them from re-entering the game client for the time was never confirmed, but I've heard it between 30 and 40 minutes. And so literally the card was released bugged, and Second Dinner had to forcibly temporarily suspend Kitty Pryde's use. And again, I think that this was necessary because not only was it causing crashes for people, it was actively preventing people from playing the game. And so that happened 2 days after release.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to date, there has been very little communication as to when Kitty will return. We speculate, and I should note, this is purely speculation on our part, that she will return with the next major in-client patch. So that's usually when the downgrades occur, and when the Shuri nerf will occur. More on that later. And, that means that she'll have been out of the game for almost a month. Compensation has been promised for all players, but it is not clear if there will be additional compensation for those who spent 6,000 tokens who got to use it for a whopping 2 days. Also, is there going to be extra compensation for those who, were subjected to the bug? Because, while we were playing, we're like, oh, this guy clearly isn't trying because they're infinite. But think about it. You're rank 99. You're in your final boss game. You have the game-winning hand. Your opponent snaps. You snap back. You're ready to give them what for and get your 8 cubes and hit infinite. And then you're kicked out of the game. You can't get back in. You're like, oh crap, I'll try to get in on mobile. Nope, doesn't work. And not only can you not get back in, you lose 8 cubes. Now, no one's going to tell me that if that happened to them, they would be throwing their phone against the wall, putting their fist through the wall. I don't know what, but I mean, it's insane. So, does someone who is subjected to that, frankly, quite tormenting situation, are they going to be entitled to extra compensation? Nobody really knows. And, I'll be honest, I don't have high expectations for the compensation. We joked 50 credits or a title.
Yeah.
That meme that said like my expectations
Pryde.
did it say like my expectations were low, but like holy bleep, right? That's what it's gonna be.
Yeah,
I will tell you what I would think is fair compensation. Now, I don't expect this, and I'm trying to be realistic, but frankly, if it's 3 weeks, I would say I want 6,000 collector tokens compensation.
Yeah.
What they're likely going to do is they're going to say, well, we're just going to delay dropping her down to pool 4, so you'll still get your full period of exclusivity, which doesn't really do me a whole lot of good because I already spent the tokens, and all that's doing is punishing other players who are not able to access the card earlier or, for whatever reason. So I think that this is one that we're going to be watching very carefully, and I think that they have a challenge here to meet player expectations and not really come across as being, well, I don't know how else to say
not
it.
Optimistic.
Crummy. Yeah. So that's kind of where we are. The silence about Kitty has been deafening, especially when they have time to answer the most inane questions on Discord, like the things they engage with, like good grief. So anyways, that's where we are with Kitty Pryde. And you zombies, you were a Kitty Pryde purchaser as well, right?
Yeah, so I got Kitty on the day one. Also, kind of worth noting that not only was Kitty of Pryde only available for 2 days, one of those days was the Krakoa hot location. So it's almost like it was one day. I mean, there's some people, I know a few people who are like, I literally bought Kitty like an hour before they announced this.
And I understand that if you have Kitty pinned in your shop, you can't actually purchase her. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's just pinned there. You could unpin it, but you can't actually buy her. She can't show up in your shop. For us variant whales, her variants can't show up in the shop, which is silly. It's very unfortunate. And this is also combined with the fact that pretty much everyone I know who got the card really liked the card. It's kind of like Thanos to an extent, where Thanos lets you play lets you draw cards and play more cards. Kitty, you were always like trying to weave her into a turn. And it was fun because it felt like you were playing more cards, even though, you were just kind of playing the same card again. The gameplay of the card was fun. It was interesting. It was probably, I think, the best card release in Pool 5 in a long time. Maybe, in my opinion, since probably like Darkhawk.
Yep.
And definitely the most unique card we've gotten in a long time. And so I think that adds to the frustration that everyone was really liking this card and was excited to play with this card and had a great time with it. And then it just got kind of ripped away. And mind you, this is also happening during a time where the metagame was at like its worst. Like this was still well, she really did she come out after? When did she come out? Did she come out after the patch? She came out after the patch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was after the patch. They all kind of blur together, but
Yeah.
it was still not an optimal meta. You know, like Shuri became the S tier deck, and it wasn't the most fun of times. So having a fun new card that people were enjoying gave us a bit of something to do while we were waiting for them to actually balance the game. And taking that away, and the other thing is like your tokens are just kind of in limbo. Like what if it takes them longer to fix this, and you could have gotten like one of the upcoming cards like Snowguard or Jeff the Shark, or like I think that adds to a lot of frustration because some people just bought her because they wanted a fun new thing to mess around with, and now not only do they not have their fun new thing, they can't even use their resources that were invested to do something else in the meantime and get it later. I think that adds to a lot of player frustration right now.
It's digital currency. Like they should be able to know who purchased the card. Like just give those people.
Just give people an option.
Just give people.
Hey, do you want to return Kitty for now and get your tokens back? Like
you know what though? We're sorry. Hard. What are we at now? Two weeks about, or is it one? I don't know.
It was a week ago. Wait.
Got disabled on the 30th.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's been a bit over a week.
It's the people that bought the card, like they should just deposit 6,000 tokens in your account, right? Like, and then if you eventually get her back, then cool. But I don't know. I don't see it. I don't know. It feels like the right thing to do to me, but
I guess where it gets a little more complicated is like if someone's already bought like a variant for the card, and because people have done that, but still I think they should. I'm guessing they probably don't have the technology to make this the simplest, but it would have been nice if they gave people an option like, hey, you can wait for us to fix this, or you could just choose to, even if you had to go through support or something, like, hey, we can refund you your tokens for this card.
So it sucks though, because like you'd still want your card, right? And if you don't, say you took the option for the refund, but then you lose the card, then like what, you're gonna have to wait for it to like show up in your shop again? Or...
I know, yeah, it's still not ideal, but it'd be better than what they've done. I don't know. I just hope I don't, like Blue said, I don't really have high hopes that they're gonna like meet player expectation for compensation. And I really think it would be super awful if they were just like, well, we're going to wait an extra month for Kitty dropping.
Oh, they're going to do that. They're going to do that for sure. You know, it'd be really cool if they just gave everyone Kitty Pryde.
That would be pretty cool.
And then for those who bought Kitty Pryde, I don't know, give them...
Then you get your credits back. Yeah.
Or give us all give us all the Kitty Pryde variants or something of value. I don't know.
The variants are pretty good. I mean, this one that we had up on the screen with Lockheed on it is really cool.
Yeah, it's not released yet, sadly.
But well, I mean, they data mined it, so they can.
Oh yeah, I mean, they can put it out whenever they want. But yeah, it would be. Not gonna do that. It would be a good. I think I would be. I'd be real happy if they did anything even remotely close to that. Just something, because it's so frustrating having a card you really like and really enjoy playing, and that you invested resources in, especially if you're not a whale, right? Like you get one pool 5 card a month, right? If this is your pool 5 card for the month, and now you don't have it for a month, you're probably pretty not happy.
Pretty not happy is probably a pretty charitable way of putting it.
Yeah.
Well, let's. I suppose we should move on, but yeah, it's unfortunate.
So we've just talked about cool cards that were removed from the game. Now we can go ahead and talk about cool cards that were added to the game and not removed from the game.
I like this card. So Hit Monkey is the card of the month. This is our season pass card, right? That you get for the season pass. And this month's theme is called Animals Assemble, which is really cute. So with the battle pass, you get also variants for both Goose and Cosmo, our show's namesake here, that are very, very cute by Rian Gonzalez, which he's an amazing artist. Or he, they, she, I don't know.
I believe.
Anyways,
Yes.
they're amazing artists. I love the artwork, particularly for the Cosmo. We were looking at your golden split of it earlier, and oh my gosh! But yeah, Hipp Monkey, which reminds me, like, oh wow, that would be great with Kitty Pryde, huh? But I digress. So let me pull up the monkey anyhow. I don't have the actual monkey up. I'll find it when you guys talk about the monkey.
So Hipp Monkey is really cool. I think this is the best pass card in a while. Probably the best pass card since Zabu. MODOK was good, but like
it seems really MODOK strong. Yeah,
was kind of like where you want to be for a season pass card, and I think Hipp Monkey hits a similar note where he's like powerful but not overly powerful. But yeah, it's a fun card. It supports some powerful archetypes and fun archetypes that people have been a fan of. The main places this is seeing play are the Sarah control style deck that tries to vomit out a bunch of cards onto the board on the final turn. Has good synergy with Mysterio since that's like playing 3 cards, so that gets him to 6 off the bat. It's been seeing play in the bounce deck since that makes their stuff cheaper. They have a lot of cheap cards. They're running Mysterio too for the synergy. Also good with Bast, who makes all the Mysterio clones 3 power, makes Monkey 3 base power. It's a good card. The main decks, Sarah and Bounce, are the ones seeing the most usage. And a little bit of Zoo. I tried out some Zoo with it. It's a pretty decent Zoo card as well, which is kind of, I guess on brand for being a monkey. But I like the card a lot, and I think this is really where you want a lot of season pass cards to be. Powerful, but not so powerful they feel like they're warping the whole game around it, like pre-nerf Zabu did. Like it's a nice boost to some. Sarah was already a powerful deck. Bounce was like decent, but before like this and Kitty, it wasn't really shining to its full potential. But now with these 2 new cards, it really feels a lot better and more competitive. I think this is kind of what you're aiming for, kind of like what MODOK did with discard, where MODOK was a huge boost to the discard archetype. Sure, it didn't see play in a ton of other stuff, but whether you're playing like the regular discard or the hella discard, MODOK was a really huge inclusion. I think Hipp Monkey is doing a similar thing here, and that's kind of where I think most season pass cards should be. Just like good card, definitely worth it for the value. I mean, if you're going to spend any money in Snap, Pass is the way to do it, because not only are you getting a card, which as we know, the Series 5 cards come at a premium, but you also get all the other stuff inside it. Like the Cosmo variant we featured that we were showcasing, that's one of the ones on the pass. There's a great Goose. Funnily enough, the Hipp Monkey variant I don't actually like as much as the base, because I think the base card is so amazing. The variant's like a futuristic one, but like he's got like a suit and sunglasses. Like I don't know. I find this one pretty hilarious, and it's really good art, and it feels like a really good goal of what you want kind of a season pass card to be. So I hope we see more stuff like Hipp Monkey.
Yeah, I agree. It's good and it's fun. Rax in chat, I think, hit the nail on the head, right? I really like Hipp Monkey. For the people that have it, it's a strong and interesting card. For the people that don't, it's possible to counter and doesn't make me feel like I'm at a competitive disadvantage just because I didn't spend $10. And I think that that's a really good perspective on it, because I agree, like it's viable, it's competitively viable. But if you decide not to purchase it or go that route, like
you're still fine.
You're still like, you're not like at some terrible disadvantage. With Zabu, it was like, well, if you didn't get it, you're at a terrible disadvantage, especially you're trying to get it later. Or as we've seen, we keep seeing this happen over and over. By the time it trickles down in its pool level, it's been nerfed at least once, and you don't get to experience the initial like buzz of playing it as it was released. So anyways.
Or as much experimentation. Like I don't even think it's only about if a card gets nerfed. I think what makes card games fun for a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people, is the experimentation of, hey, there's this new card. What can we do with this? And sure, not everything you try is going to be a home run and be great. But that's kind of the fun, is like trying out stuff and seeing what works and what doesn't. I love that experimentation. That's one of my favorite things to do in card games. So it can be a little like, if you're a person who really likes doing that, I think it can take the wind out of your sail a bit when by the time you do get access to a card, if it's been like it's already been kind of figured out that, hey, it goes in this deck and this deck, and these other ones aren't really worth it.
Yeah. All right. Well, it looks like we have a couple of decks here to showcase. Yeah, with Hipp Monkey.
Yeah. So what I did was, a lot of people tweeted Hipp Monkey decks, and it's kind of difficult, especially in Marvel Snap, with the ladder system being as challenged as it is right now. Are the decks being featured good, or did the good players just beat up on bots? So, I went to Untapped, where I have a premium subscription. Untapped is one of the data aggregator sites, and they're famous for doing Magic the Gathering, also HS Replay. They do it for Hearthstone as well, just by a different name brand, but the same basic engine. And so when searching for the best Hipp Monkey decks, these were the two that floated to the top. So the top deck is the statistically, hand quotes, best Hipp Monkey deck to date, which is very close to, I think, what a lot of people were playing. There was a lot of conversation as to whether you want to include America Chavez or not include America Chavez. Some very good players said, always include America Chavez. And I was on that train as well, because my love of America is a meme at this point. Zombies was not an America Chavez fan, convinced me to run the deck without America. And with Shang-Chi, this was before Hipp Monkey came out, and I went from being an America stan to understanding why perhaps we don't want America in the list. And the data, at least preliminarily, is suggesting that perhaps maybe Zombies was onto something. It's almost like you're good at this game, Zombies.
Go figure.
Yeah, so that's the bounce deck. And for those that are listening and not watching, the deck has a 0.44 cube average, a 58.9% win rate over 330 games. Not the biggest sample, but it is a new card. And the deck includes Hood, Bast, Iceman, Korg, Angela, the aforementioned Hipp Monkey, Black Widow, Beast, Falcon, Mysterio, Bishop, and Darkhawk. Darkhawk being the kind of it's just an extra point slam, and kind of synergizes with Korg, especially if you get a couple bounces. Also Black Widow as well. I think if Kitty Pryde was available, we probably would cut Black Widow or maybe Darkhawk. Hard to say. But yeah, this deck has performed quite well. I haven't been playing it myself because of Leech, but also because of Sandman. There were a few people that popularized some Electro Ramp Sandman decks, Zombies, and that kind of counters the deck a little bit. But still, I think this is a solid performer.
You know what? I've been playing a ton of Galactus, I've been dying to play it, right? And I will say, I think what the bounce deck has going for it, right, is it goes wide. The Black Widow is really frustrating to play against because it disrupts what you're trying to do. Like, yeah, you can't draw cards, and what you really want to do with such a small deck size. And your Bishop and your Angela, like they keep growing to dangerous levels to win lanes, but
yeah,
a lot of times I'll see them, like players will try to keep them just out of Shang-Chi range, right? So that they don't
yeah, I've gotten mine shanged a few times.
It just depends. Or you can wait. You wait until the last turn to try
that's kind of the cool thing about bounces. Sometimes it's easier to throw priority because you can just bounce your cards that are giving you a lead. So that way you play them on the final turn and you can't get Shang-Chi'd or Valkyrie'd or something like that. Or Killmongered, which Killmonger... Oh, the bounce deck does not appreciate Killmonger very much.
Anyways, yeah, no, it's I've seen a lot of it this month, and it seems very viable to me. And it's funny, like you mentioned a month ago, we were laughing at Beast, right? Or like I got a Beast variant, I was like, oh, why'd I get this one? I wish I could have a different one. But now it's like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. So I like seeing new archetypes be popularized just to...
I think it's something Snap could use more of.
Variety is the spice of life.
And it's hard. Like, I think that's one thing the game has trouble with is the way they release cards it's kind of hard to put in a new archetype, right? Because unless you create a card that like Thanos or Galactus that are like they fundamentally change something about the game,
Hmm.
most of the time in card games you need multiple cards to make an archetype work, right? Like we were talking about how the bounce deck had like pieces that worked and it was kind of okay, but you need a lot of different synergy, right? We only have two bounce cards and you just need a certain critical mass of synergy. And without that, the deck can be inconsistent. And so it's kind of difficult for Snap where if they want to make a whole new archetype, they have to do that usually either with one like really ridiculous card, or if they want to do it like other card games, you need a few different cards to do that. And it's like kind of hard to do that, right? Because you aren't expecting people to get all those cards right away. So if you need, let's say, two or three of the new cards to make this new archetype work, and it doesn't work without all of those cards, it makes the individual pieces feel kind of underwhelming and not worth it. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of a challenge for the game. There is a card we're not going to talk about it today, but there is a card upcoming in I think the May season that looks like it could potentially create a whole new archetype on its own. So I mean, they definitely have the design space and the capability of doing it. So maybe we'll see some more of that in the future. But I think that's something the game could use a lot. Is just we have a lot of neat established archetypes, and it's neat to see cards like Hipp that boost up kind of underplayed or underperforming ones and reinforce some decent ones. But I definitely think more archetypes is a good thing for the game.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's better than when we were playing Zabu and Zabu and Zabu, right? Like
Yeah,
at least
everything was the Zabu archetype.
so. Anyways, I see in chat like there's some. Just keep in mind this card is only a week old, right? And
yeah, it's all early data, and I'm sure the Chavez versions, I'm sure they're fine. It comes down to personal preference for me. The thing I really disliked about Chavez was that I noticed a decent amount of my games. You're almost never playing that Chavez on the final turn, and if you are, I think that says you're already in a kind of bad position with the deck.
the only reason that we include Chavez in most decks, right, is to try to get the cards that you want earlier,
Yeah,
because you're guaranteed to not draw them on turn 6. Like,
I think the downside is bigger in this deck though, because we want to be playing as many cards as we can. So the fact that our final draw is a card we can't play if we're playing literally anything else, I think is a huge downside.
yeah,
And that's present in like some Chavez decks. A lot of the decks they use her most effectively, they don't really care that, yeah, I don't get a chance at a different card for the final turn. Like let's say Galactus, right? Because you need your Galactus by turn 5, right? So you don't care that Chavez is your final draw a lot of the time. Or in like the Electro ramp, I really care about getting my Electro, or I don't care about, or I care about getting my Electro or my Wave or my other ramp cards so much that I don't mind Chavez being my final draw. Whereas Bounce, I personally don't believe there's any one or two cards in here that are so important to winning the game. You need to give yourself that downside of essentially just not getting a playable draw on the final turn. From at least what I've played with Bounce, I think it's better to just get that extra card on the final turn, because usually we're gonna have the mana to play it.
yeah. Well, and we can take a look at these later. I think as the card is out longer, the statistics will change a little bit and get more refined. It's still a young-ish archetype with a new card in it, so we'll see how that sorts itself out. We've got a couple versions on the screen here. The other is the Sarah version, right?
Yeah,
So
nice and Sarah. And the big thing I want people to know about like the Sarah decks is it is okay not to greed your Hipp. Like it's so easy to be like, okay, I'm gonna hold this Hipp for the final turn. It's gonna get huge. It's gonna be awesome. And yeah, you do that sometimes, and it's really fun and it's cool and it wins you the game. But sometimes it's just kind of okay to be like, all right, well, I don't have much going on in the early game. Turn 4, I'm gonna play Mysterio and Hipp as a 2/6, and you're essentially putting like 10 power into play. More if you get your Nova to spread it across the board. And you're also making your opponent guess like where's the real Mysterio, and So I think it's important, like, don't always greed this card, because sometimes it's just fine to play as a tempo play.
Yeah, we have a odd version here on the screen that features both Darkhawk, Korg, and Rock Slide. At the time when I pulled the data, all of the Sarah lists were 50% or below, and this one was an outlier. And I did find Darkhawk interesting, as the card performs well in a lot of other decks. I should note that obviously a day and a half later, the traditional Sarah list that doesn't run Darkhawk has kind of tied in essence with this one. It's hard to say what the optimal build is. I suspect that Darkhawk is probably just generally good. I think that the bottom line is that while Hitmonkey is good in Control Sarah, I think that it really shines in Bounce, and that's probably where you're going to get the most monkey for your buck.
Yeah, I generally agree with that. It's a nice bonus in Sarah, but it's by no means required to play the Sarah deck. Like regular Sarah without it, still very, very good. It's a neat addition, but it by no means makes or breaks the deck. I think like Zabu is more of an impactful addition to Sarah than Monkey was, because Zabu enabled you to get your tech cards cheaper when you didn't draw your Sarah, or it also kind of helped enable these Darkhawk versions too. So I think like it's good. It's also very fun, but it's not. If you want to play a Sarah deck and you don't have Hitmonkey, that's not really the one I think you need to be going after in order to have success with the Sarah deck. But Bounce, it's a pretty big boost to the Bounce archetype.
Now, for those who didn't get the battle pass and are seeing a lot of Hitmonkey, as noted earlier, the card is counterable. And Zombies, you had a great deal of success playing into Hitmonkey very early this season, and learned a few things as you attained probably your quickest infinite yet. So congratulations on that. So tell us a little bit about how to counter Hitmonkey if you're seeing a lot of it.
Well, sand is coarse and it's rough, and Hitmonkey hates it. And yeah, so I played a lot of the Electro Ramp this season. It's just kind of a fun deck. It's also a really budget deck. There are no Pool 4 or Pool 5 cards in this deck, and only a handful of Pool 3. It's Arrow, Doom, Magneto, and Electro Wave. All right, so like half the deck's Pool 3. But you know, the game's been out for a while. A lot of people are pretty deep into Pool 3 at this point. Now, this was pre-Sunspot nerf. Does the nerf actually affect Sunspot that much in this deck? Not really. I mean,
there were a lot of turns when you were like not doing anything though, so Sunspot felt like a really good inclusion. Well, I played a ton of it last month.
Yeah.
The only difference in the version that I played is I swapped out Jubilee for Shang-Chi. But aside from that, everything, it was card for card.
Yeah, I wasn't personally a fan of Shang in the deck, though I don't think it's terrible. The thing I like about Jubilee is Jubilee serves as your third ramp card. And I think this deck really needs a third ramp card, because when you don't draw your Electro and you don't draw your Wave, you are really sad.
You're really like doing nothing.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. And Jubilee helps you be less sad. It also enables a high roll with Odin. I found Jubilee was actually relevant a few times where I would be down to like 2 cards in my deck, and I didn't have any cards in my hand that that would win me the game, but I knew if I pulled like my Doctor Doom out of the deck, it would win. And that like came up more than I expected it to. But obviously, to shut down the Hitmonkey stuff, Bounce and Sarah really do not like getting leeched and really do not like getting Sandmaned. So if you're cheating that out on turn 4, or even in Sandman's case, especially against Sarah, it's fine to wait until turn 5. It just really slows them to a crawl. Ebony Maw has been surprisingly good because, you know, we have other ways of getting into that lane, like with Doom. Big tip about Ebony Maw is you pretty much never want to play that card on turn 1 unless you have a really compelling reason to, because you give yourself a chance to draw Sunspot on turn 2, and then you can stack them in the same lane, so you always have the freedom to like pump it up, and you get to see what the other location is, because sometimes you'll end up that seeing that location will help you determine like, hey, I should be playing Ebony Maw here instead of here, and that can be quite relevant. So that's kind of a big trap I think some people fall into is playing Ebony Maw on one. Don't do that. There's really no reason to do that unless maybe, you get like an Elysium so you can Electro on two or something like that. But there has to be a very compelling reason to drop the card on one. Usually there isn't. But we just use Electro and Wave to try and get one of our threats out early. Obviously, Electro's preferable, but Wave is also pretty decent. You do have to kind of weigh that downside of you're letting the opponent cheat out. But Wave was kind of good because not only can she limit what your opponent can play, but these decks like Sarah, these decks like the bounce deck, they don't really have a big thing to cheat out anyway. I guess the Sarah deck, maybe they cheat out the Sarah, but that's really it. And the monkey deck, they don't run, aside from Chavez, any card that costs more than 4. So really benefits from that. And then we just have good top end. Arrow is still really good when your opponent can only play one card a turn, it turns out. Doom lets you go wide, which also is really good when you can only play one card a turn. Odin just gets our powerful battle cry or on reveal effects going again. That high roll with Jubilee is really nice too. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, it kind of just like blows people out of the game entirely. And then Magneto, I think Magneto is really underrated in the current meta.
Magneto's great. Oh my gosh.
He's really good. And the amount of times I beat a Darkhawk deck because I pull their Darkhawk and their Rock Slide on the final turn is very satisfying.
It's very good against the Galactus decks too.
That too.
As a Galactus enjoyer here, but it pulls your Electro into the Galactus lane or whatever it is, and it just it'll cost you.
Sometimes they fill it up, right? And then you can't arrow them into that lane, so Magneto kind of gives you a way to do that. And there was more Galactus than I expected to see on the ladder. But if you're looking for something solid to play, I really do stand by this Electro deck being not only just a really good budget deck, but just like a good deck in general. Like I had someone ask in the comments, like, hey, if you had, all the pool 4 and pool 5 cards, what would you upgrade this Electro deck with? And the simple answer is I don't think there is a pool 4 or a pool 5 card you really want in this deck currently.
I don't think so.
I have all the cards for the most part, and there's just not any of those cards that I want in this deck. This deck is just very good as it is. Maybe that'll change over time, but for now, I think it's really, really good, especially if you're running into a lot of Sarah, a lot of Hipp Monkey. Pretty good into Galactus, too. We have decent ways to counter them. It's just a solid deck. The only thing that this struggles with is Shuri sometimes, because Shuri can go taller than us. But if Shuri has their God hand of their protection into Shuri on 4, just leave and wait for them to not get a God hand, and then you can probably compete versus them. So this is
what I played last season. Up to I think I had Shuri pinned in my shop, and I got to about rank 80 with this, I think. And then I finally got the tokens to unlock Shuri and switched over to playing. I was playing Shuri and also the Thanos deck a lot. But this is what got me up until that point when I had unlocked both of those cards. And it's just solid. It feels really good. It's a lot of fun. And I agree, having some of the other cards, I don't really know what you'd want to swap out in this. I think for me, I had Shang instead of Jubilee, and it was it was okay, but I could see you've sold me on Jubilee. With these type of decks, when you don't get your ramp, you're really sad because your hand is just chunky and you can't really do anything. So if there's a way to get something else out and being able to play Odin in the Jubilee lane to get an extra whatever it is can be really nice. Odin,
especially when she pulls him from the deck, that's the most beautiful thing. It's just oh, boom, not only are you getting an 8 power for free, but you're getting another good thing, maybe you get your Leech or your Sandman or Doom to go wide. It's really good.
Well, and Odin was great with not only Doom, of course, Doom into Odin is the ultimate obvious play, right? But getting an early Arrow, getting an early Magneto.
Yeah, and then just doing it again on the final turn.
It's great. It's great. The disruption and people don't see it coming. That's not what you would think to Odin your Magneto, right? But it really can disrupt if you need it to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very versatile deck. It's really and it's just fun to play. I've always liked like ramp style decks of like cheating stuff out, and this it's just a very enjoyable deck. It's relatively simple to learn too. I don't think there's a very high curve of learning this.
It's a big priest.
Yeah, kind of. Snap Big Priest. Oh, hey, at least it's not the Zabu Infinite Big Priest. That was the true
that
Big
was
Priest.
that was far worse. So the other deck here is Darkhawk Devil Dino. And there's a few different versions going around. This is one that doesn't feature Moon Girl and Quinjet. It runs Coulson. Sorry, I'm always tempted to say Coulson. Coulson, however you say it the Americanized way, and you're running armor. Some people are running Maria Hill,
Or
and Shang-Chi instead of Cosmo. There's a lot of flex on this deck, but really at its core, this is a point slam deck that's maybe especially now with the recent second nerf for Red Skull, a little bit more viable. I think this is a solid performer. I've been playing it, and even though I'm climbing, it feels like very slowly. The win and cube rate has been very respectable with it.
It's a good deck. It's a very solid deck.
I think you can build it in many different ways, and it's fine. I like
Definitely.
the Moon Girl Quinjet version.
Yeah, I think it's a fine version too. My big philosophy with the deck is one, like I think every single one of these decks should be running Cosmo, because not only does it protect your big thing, and like that's like most of our game plan is we're trying to win with a Dino or a Darkhawk and potentially copying it or whatnot.
Agreed.
But the amount of times that I was ahead and had priority and got to just Cosmo Shuri's Taskmaster lane, I lost count of the amount of times that just won me the game. Or the amount of times where I slammed the Cosmo on 6, and then they thought they were being all sneaky, bringing out the Shang-Chi that nobody would expect, because Shang-Chi totally isn't in like every deck in the game right now. And that's kind of why I put in armor, because I feel like we're a proactive deck. And so just having the tool to say, hey, you can't interact with my big thing very easily, like it won me a lot of games that Shang-Chi wouldn't have won me, because it was defending against it rather than, hoping the opponent had a big thing that I could interact with. And especially as a deck where we're kind of, a lot of the time we have priority, feels like Shang-Chi isn't as good because of that. And then the disruption, I think, is also really underrated. Not only are we just like pumping our Darkhawk, but giving your opponent rocks is really good.
Yeah.
Like I think I don't know, maybe it's not underrated, but I feel like people get so caught up in thinking, oh, we're just doing this to make the Darkhawk better. It's easy to forget that like denying them a draw or more is like really, really good.
I'll tell you what, like I agree with this a bazillion %. I've been playing nothing but Galactus for like several days now, and
my condolences.
You face Galactus. It's so fun, but I don't want to derail the show. Anyways, the tricky piece is it's so draw dependent, right? You need two things. You need your ramp and you need your Galactus. And if you don't get either of those, you lose. And there's nothing like, you're sweating trying to get that card that you need, and you top deck a freaking rock, and then the next turn you top deck another rock, and it's like, oh my God. It's infuriating, and it's surprisingly good. And when your deck contains 12 cards only, and you need to draw a specific card or two to like win, and you're putting in 4 rocks to their deck, right? You two with Korg and another 2 with Rock Slide, right? Like, what is that? Like a quarter of my deck is now rocks? Like, geez.
It adds up. And it's Subterranea at home, and who doesn't love Subterranea?
Yeah. It's the rocks are good. I think that
Coulson's really good too, by the way. Coulson, I wasn't sold on him when he came out. Coulson is a really good card, because most of the time, like, you don't need to worry about the cards he's giving you. It's a really good tempo play on 3 that keeps your hand big for the Dino. And sometimes he'll just give you a card that's good. I was very not high on the card when it came out, but I'm very sold on him in this shell. And like, I think Moon Girl's also fine, but Moon Girl feels a lot worse when you don't have your Zabu. And there's a good amount of time you do not have your Zabu. Like,
It's true. I feel that sometimes you don't get Mystique, or one of the other like tall boys. So Moon Girl can give you opportunities to make an additional Darkhawk or Dino. There's arguments either way. Proactive Cosmo is a big reason to play the decks.
Definitely.
Sarah Surfer was so good because it was so good at gripping priority and letting you play that Cosmo proactively. And there's a lot of I feel that this deck, while it doesn't play like Sarah Surfer at all, it does hold priority reasonably well.
And it baits the Shang-Chi's really well. So like getting that armor Cosmo in the final turn, it's so funny when you slam a big thing and they immediately snap and you're like, gee, I wonder what they're gonna do.
Yeah. It's a nice counterplay. Now the Darkhawk Dino deck is able to compete with Point Slam a little bit because we had some recent balance changes that seemingly came out of nowhere using the OTA technology, or over the air technology. And I think that there's a lot to talk about here, because there was obviously, when the last balance change occurred, everyone relegated it to being a Shuri Red Skull buff, which I was one of them. And while Red Skull was hit in this change, so too were other cards that maybe didn't really seem evident or didn't have the same urgency. So the first nerf is Sunspot.
Yeah. I mean, it was the best one drop in the game. I'm surprised it took this long, frankly.
So here's the thing: just because it's the best card in the game, like it doesn't mean that it needs to be nerfed. You don't have to nerf something just because it's good. That's such a weird.
I agree with you. I mean, I'm crying about this, but this is the old Hearthstone philosophy of, we're seeing this card in too many decks. Like every single deck just includes Sunspot because it's a really great one drop.
So why didn't they nerf it last month?
I don't
know.
I'll tell you why they didn't.
Month too. They said it was on their radar.
Yeah, I'll tell you why they didn't nerf it last month. Because now Kitty Pryde, oops, Kitty Pryde should have been out. But when Kitty Pryde inevitably comes back, Kitty Pryde will probably be the best one drop in the game as a Series 5 card. The timing is pretty suspect.
It just, the thing that annoyed me about, I don't mind that they changed Sunspot, because like I do think he was probably a bit better than he should have been, and I don't think he's a bad card. Now that's the big thing, is I don't mind when they change cards like this, as long as the intent isn't to make them go from like really, really played to not played at all. That's really what bothers me. So the fact that they were like, all right, one power off, there will be, a handful of games where it makes a difference, but overall it's still a really good card, and the decks that were running Sunspot aren't cutting Sunspot. And I think that is usually the benchmark of a relatively successful nerf. I don't like when cards get deleted unless their names are Leech or Leader. But
you're not going to get your wish on half of those cards that you've just mentioned.
Yeah, but even then, like, I think they were actually too heavy-handed with the leader nerf overall. So, and they've actually said like that has impacted their balancing, because it appears they didn't make that change with the intent to kill them off as much as they did and whatnot. So that's made them a little more reserved in terms of like, they don't like deleting cards, and I think that's important. That's kind of one thing that annoyed me about a lot of the other card games, is when they take a card that is really, really powerful. Like, I'm not saying the card doesn't need to be nerfed. Like, a lot of the times it does. I don't like how they go from really, really powerful to not playable at all. It's like, find a better middle ground. That was one of the things that pushed me away from Hearthstone a bit, was I really disliked, especially with the
Did you see they reverted Warsong Commander?
That was really funny. I died to that the other day.
Oh no.
Oh god. Anyway, sorry, I digress, but like
the nerf is fine. I just like, we've been suffering for Shuri Red Skull for so long, with which Sunspot is an important part of. Like the change, why now? Why not last month or when they nerfed Red Skull initially? I just find it.
I would have liked buffs to 1-drops to go with this, because they said part of the intention here is to make room for other 1-drops.
Kitty Pryde's the buff to
I know, but
1-drop.
buffs to 1-drops people have.
Oh,
or
wow.
people can play, because even if you have Pryde, you can't play her. But I dislike the logic that they used, where it's like, oh, by nerfing Sunspot, we're gonna have more room for other 1-drops to see play, and I don't think that's really true. I think the decks that wanted to run Sunspot don't really want to run other 1-drops most of the time. I mean, yeah, Shuri Zero runs Zero and Titania, but it's not going to be swapping Sunspot for something else. Electro Ramp isn't swapping it for something else. Like maybe
Sunspot is a 1-drop that plays in decks that don't really run other 1-drops. Asterisk, Shuri is different because the 1-drops are more there for utility, but like Thanos, Lockjaw, or just,
you're
that's
not
a good
going to see
example.
that in Thanos Lockjaw as much anymore, in my opinion.
Agreed.
And whatnot.
Yeah, no.
And so it's like, I don't mind that they did this, but I think if their goal was actually to make more 1-drops playable, you need to accomplish that by also buffing 1-drops, which I think is something that may be on the horizon, but didn't really happen this patch.
Yeah. But I think that my griping aside, the change is fine. It is the most played card, most played 1-drop rather. Buffs for other 1-drops, I don't know. It's hard because like roles play an important part. What are they going to do? Make like Ant-Man plus 5,
It's hard,
plus
yeah.
4 instead of
Admittedly,
plus
it is
3?
hard, right? Because there are
Yeah.
less numbers to tweak. Like, if they wanted to nerf Sunspot some other way, it's like, how do you do it other than just knocking a power off? Because they're only, the less numbers you have on a card, the harder it is to tweak. So it's always hard to tweak those. Like, it's like Silver Surfer, right? Like, for me, in an optimal world, I would have liked Silver Surfer to be buffed by 2.5 instead of 2 or 3. But unfortunately, it doesn't really work with, the small numbers we have. Buff Electra, yes, please.
Yeah, give Electra another point of power. Thin J suggested in the chat. That seems like a reasonable change.
You know what I think would be a more fun and kind of thematic change for Electra would be if she could destroy a 1-drop through like armor, or just so make it so it's not an on reveal. Just like she always destroys the thing. Like that way there's more reason to play that card like for its smaller stat line, right? Rather than just trading with
or a 1-drop, like random 1-drop from your opponent, like even if it was in a different lane. Yeah.
I don't know about that,
I just love the exile kind of effect where it would get around like a Cosmo or an armor, and I think that would be really neat, and it would be kind of more thematic for the character, because
it
a
would be
1-point
on brand,
buff
yeah.
would be nice, but it's like I don't think a 1-point buff does, like, I don't think it makes the card that much more interesting. It might make it a little more playable.
Are we making a lore-based argument here?
I know. What have I become? What have I become?
Oh no.
But I think that I think that that's probably one that could be looked at for a buff. I like Thin J's suggestion of a 2/1 if you don't want to change the mechanics of it. Anyway, so that's Sunspot. The next nerf, which I think is the one that we were kind of waiting for, expecting.
I called this one. So I called this one like, I don't know, like the day after the patch hit.
The day after it got buffed, I mean nerfed initially.
Yeah. I was like, all right, well, and like I thought they weren't going to take this long to do it, but we know what's going to happen. They're going to knock off another point of power again. And that's what they did. They put him from 13 to 12 and kept all the other stuff the same. But I do think this one, let me see. Do we have the developer comment for Red Skull? Yeah, we do. Basically, we don't have to read the whole thing, but basically they were like, yeah, the changes we made to the Shuri Red Skull deck, while impactful, were not as impactful as we would have liked, and we're changing Red Skull so he's a little bit less tall now. But they finally concede that, well, maybe it's not Red Skull that's been the problem, which has been, something people have been saying for a while.
You don't say.
Yeah, so they're like, all right. we adjusted Red Skull to weaken his interactions with Shuri and Taskmaster. We wanted to keep him good for other decks that used him, even though, if we're being honest, the only other deck that uses him is usually that weird Dracula Zoo deck. I don't really see him anywhere else. Maybe some people have other places they play him. I know there was one person who did like an Ask the Devs who was absolutely like frothing at the mouth because I guess Red Skull was like their favorite pet deck. Then they didn't run Shuri in it, and they were pretty mad about it, which that always, happens sometimes. But they were taking a more conservative approach with how they nerfed the Red Skull. And they were like, all right, well, we've seen what happens. We've seen Shuri, Taskmaster, Red Skull still too strong, so we're not getting another point off. But the big thing, they realized that Shuri needs to be changed in some way. However, that change needs to be in a patch. It cannot be done in these over-the-air changes. What does that mean? That means they're not tweaking the numbers. They can tweak mana cost, they can tweak power, but they can't do more in-depth changes without a full patch. And so they have confirmed that they're going to be adjusting Shuri in the next patch.
I'm glad they are, but I swear to God, every time they nerf a card that like I paid a bunch of credits for or tokens for, like it's really irritating because like it's happened like 3 months in a row now. Like you buy the card. I just got Thanos and then it got changed, right? And it's like,
yeah, and that's kind of one of the problems with the card acquisition, right? Is because like certain players will have had it for a while and things will be stagnating, and then they want it to change, while other parts of the player base just got the card, and it's like, I don't want you to change the thing I just shelled out all these tokens for, because remember, the collector provides no refunds.
I mean, sure, he needs to go hands down, but like,
yeah, I think it's okay as long as they've made it very clear their intent is not to delete cards. I think Leader was kind of a happy accident rather than them really wanting to delete that card. And I don't think they're going to. I don't think they're going to delete Shuri, and I don't think Shuri should be deleted because I actually like Shuri a lot, not in the Red Skull deck. I think what is frustrating about the Red Skull deck isn't even that they're getting all this power; it's your lack of ability to interact with it because of the protection. So
Which drove me nuts about this was the last line. Once the change to Shuri is live, will we revert this or previous Red Skull changes? Maybe. It's like, oh, all right. Like
they're throwing a bone to the Red Skull enjoyers.
Yeah,
okay? Maybe
the Red Skull, the one Red Skull fan found out where Glenn Jones lives, and they're doing this for like his safety and well being. Because that was like a really like. There's a lot of things.
Fine. Yeah. I want more card. Like in a game is so like our card pool is so much smaller than most other card games, and it grows at a smaller rate. So I think the more cards being good, the better. And I think Red Skull was who in the right mind was calling Red Skull a problem card before Shuri? Even in his most recent iteration, where he essentially got a bit better, he was fine. I think he was a fine card. He was kind of he felt like he was exploring a similar design space as Typhoid Mary, right? But on the 5 slot instead of the 4 spot, and it was fine. I think it's fine that this card exists.
That they're going to restore him back to 13. Maybe if they put it back to like +2, 15, then that.
I wouldn't mind like a full revert. I thought you would find that plus. I mean, either way, I think it's okay for them to make this card better once you can't as easily combo him with Shuri. And my big hope for the Shuri change is that they just make it so Shuri buffs the next card you play in this lane. So that way you can still hide it behind Cosmo or behind armor, but you can't hide it behind Cosmo. And that's fine because you can interact with armor. You can Enchantress the armor. You can Valkyrie the armor lane. It's a lot easier to interact with.
About that, Zombies. So we've talked about this at length, and I thought originally that this is likely not going to be the change, but now I'm convinced this will be the change. And the reason I'm convinced is because that odd comment they made a few weeks ago about armor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they mentioned something about how they didn't like how armor was like invalidating the threat of Shang-Chi versus like the really tall stuff. And I personally thought that came out of left field entirely because
Isn't that like the point of armor, though?
I know. Well, I think the other thing is that it's also just a really good tempo play too. Like armor is just very efficiently statted for how good its effect is. I think that's generally true with a lot of the tempo cards, or not the tempo, the tech cards, except for maybe Enchantress, who's like a bit below rate. But I've never really minded armor because like we have tools to interact with armor. You can Enchantress it, you can Valkyrie it, you can pull the armor away with Polaris. Like there's so many ways you can deal with the armor. I've never been bothered by it. Cosmo annoys the crap out of me because there's no way to interact with the card. It's just like once Cosmo's down, that's it. Like, yeah, you can yoink it on the final turn or maybe turn 5 with the Electro Ramp deck with Magneto, but that's really it.
Yeah.
And they have said, like, oh, it's funny, we actually designed some cards recently that are going to probably get around Cosmo. And it's like, great, I can't wait to see those cards in 6 months and then have them be available to everyone in like 12. I'm sure that'll help fix the problem.
You took the words out of my mouth. Yeah.
So along with the 2 nerfs, we got 2 buffs, which was appreciated.
This is so hilarious because the day that they buffed this, like I pulled it from a collector's cache.
Oh, there you go. It's fate. So Shadow King went from a 4/3 to a 3/3. And Shadow King went from being arguably the worst card in the game to being slightly less worst card in the game. I don't. You played it, Zombies. What do you think?
I played it for like 5 games. And I took it out of my deck.
5 games. For Shadow King.
Still bad.
Here's the thing about Shadow King. The effect is neat. The effect is it's too weak in its current form to accomplish what the card wants to accomplish. And I think if they really want this card, although in fairness, I don't think you ever really want this to be a very popular meta card because it would get really annoying. But I think it could be better than it is. The biggest change I would like them to do to Shadow King is make it not an on reveal and make it an ongoing. Because right now, if there's a Cosmo, you can't Shadow King that lane, and that's why it hasn't been able to do anything versus the Shuri deck at all. It's a very weak card. I mean, I can't believe they ever printed this at 4, but keep in mind when this was printed at 4, unnerfed Zabu was a thing. So I think in their mind, they're like, well, you can play it for 2. But as we all know, there were just better 4 drops to play for 2. So I would like this to be an ongoing instead of an on reveal. It's also really awkward to time this card. Like, if I could just play Shadow King and indefinitely shut down my opponent's like Bishop or Angela lane, that would be really cool. And I don't think it would make the card overpowered. I think it would just be like a decent counter card that could see some play. I would actually have some negative synergy with Silver Surfer because it does affect your side too. It's important to remember. But I think they could really go a little bit further with this card and just make it an ongoing so it doesn't get countered. So its effect is happening the whole game in that lane. Because it's not like this. I've seen some confusion. Some people think this counters like ongoing effects like Null or any of these ongoings that boost power. No, it doesn't. That's not how the card works. It only does things that get buffed up by, like, let's say Angela or Bishop, or maybe you get some Ironheart buffs. Or location buffs, that's what it removes, but it doesn't remove ongoing effect buffs. So, I mean, it's nice that they made this change. Is the card better than it was? Yes. Is it playable? Not really. I mean, unless, you get a bounce gamer going all in with Angela and Bishop in the same lane, maybe you can do a cute little thing to nuke those on the final turn, but it's just too narrow right now.
Well, and I imagine there's a good number of players that don't have this card yet anyways, right? Because of where it's sitting in the pool list. So
you're not missing much.
So the review of buffed Shadow King is Zombies wish he had 4 thumbs so he could give it 4 thumbs down.
Right. I mean, it's better than it was, but this is if they want the card to actually like be useful, they probably need to go a bit further.
Yeah, I give it a meh out of 5.
Meh out of 5. Well, the next card was also an underwhelming card that was buffed. It has the dubious distinction of being Ridiculous Hat's first and only Series 5 pull, Sentry, going from a 4/8 to a 4/10.
Sweet, now it's Shang-Chi-able.
Yeah.
negative Sentry, I don't know what you call him,
The Void.
The Void also got buffed from 4/8 to negative 4/8 to negative
Negative
4,
10
negative
now.
8. Yes, it's negative 10 now. I can no longer speak. That's how we know we're fast approaching the cutoff time. So you also played this Zombies, and I think you had a slightly different opinion of this card. However, disclaimer, some friends of ours took Zombies enthusiasm to the ladder, and Zombies very quickly got rebuked. But
I would say they were more mixed results. Thank you.
oh, that is a very generous interpretation.
Look,
But
I had somebody play this against me today, and they played it and they freaking vipered the negative 10 Void, and it was so like I was so irritated because I was like, that's so stupid. That's so niche. They had to just have that right card. I was so angry, but
it's great.
Funny enough, playing Dino with the Cosmo, as soon as I see the Void come down,
yeah,
I'm like,
you slam that.
You just slam Cosmo in that lane, and yeah, it's
Yeah, Sentry doesn't appreciate opponents' Cosmos very much unless they are not in the right lane. Then he's pretty happy about it. But I like this buff a lot.
A good stat line for this card. It puts it in line with the other 4/10s with the downside.
It's also a lore win because Sentry is supposed to be this like big, one of the more powerful characters, and the fact that he was like the same power as like Jessica Jones or
oh yeah, he's supposed to have
what's the other one?
He's supposed to have the power of 1,000 blazing suns, right? Like that's the tagline.
Like Marvel Superman, right?
Yeah,
like he's supposed to be like Marvel Superman, and
except
the fact
with
that
like
before it was so boring. Like it was not only boring, but it was bad. Like I talked about this being the worst card in the game for a long time because the location restrictions.
Yeah.
Like location restriction is really, really bad on a card.
Yeah.
And then the fact that you also have a downside of you're getting a -8 or a -10 in the right lane that you have to mitigate, it made the card really, really bad. And even though he is Shang-Chiable now, and I have actually seen a few people be mad about that, which I find hilarious.
Oh my goodness.
The card is much better. Like I tried Sentry, a handful of times before the buff, and he was awful. And I have won more than a fair share of games with this card purely because either he had the extra stats or the Void that I gave away had the extra negative stats.
Player with post infinite with these results. Results may vary.
Disclaimer, yeah. But no, I had a good sample. I played roughly 60 games with this deck. I played this deck for 3.5 hours. And the win rate would have even been a little bit better if the first like 5 or 6 games I was trying like a weird version with like Carnage and Bucky, and that version was terrible. That version was hot garbage.
I think the win rate would have been better like without the Sentry.
No, but like for real, Sentry. So the whole thing with Sentry is you need at least 2 ways to mitigate the effect. And so the ways I went for, obviously Viper. You're always going to run Viper in a Sentry deck, and then you're also running
Valkyrie
Hood,
or something.
So
right?
it's like I think Valkyrie's a bit too cute personally. It's a neat idea, but then you're committing to your Valkyrie lane being on the right, and also this type of deck. It's just so much better in junk because like so many opposing decks start to like fill their lanes, and then you just get them by giving them a card. Like we run so many ways to give your opponents cards. Like the junk deck, if you ever see too much Galactus, you just play the junk deck because literally half your deck is counters to Galactus. You've got Debris, you've got Green Goblin, you've got Viper, you have Spider-Man to shut them down even if you don't draw any other stuff. Like, if there's one deck Galactus hates more than anything, it's got to be this junk deck. And it is hilariously fun to play. The 2 main ways for mitigating Sentry, I run 0 in the deck. 0 is quite good with Sentry, especially we're also running Zabu, so sometimes we can just tempo out we get out Sentry and 0 on turn 4. It's 13 power worth of stats, which is quite a lot, and you don't get the downside. You can also kind of surprise people with that on the final turn. I've had multiple games where giving people the Void just straight up won me the game on the spot, basically. And Viper's also still decent because we have things like our Hood to give them. We could give them a rock with Debris. It's just there are quite a few decks out there. Oh man, especially Thanos. Thanos is always filling up stuff with its stones. or the bounce deck. The bounce deck's always like filling up its lane and then leaving one spot so it can bounce its cards, and or you give them all these rocks and it's like, oh, you just bounced all your 1-drops. Well, now you have a handful of rocks, and it was really surprisingly effective for me. I mean, I'm not saying it's like the best deck in the world or anything, but now you can actually kind of use Sentry and have fun with it. Like, and I think that's a pretty big win because I absolutely hated Sentry before this change, and now I'm a Sentry truther.
So Sentry is the nuts. If your zombies go nom nom, for the rest of us, meh out of 5. But no, in all seriousness, I think that this is the thing with the buffs, right? It makes the cards marginally better, but is it really going to change the dynamic fundamentally?
Well, I think that's like, they need to address like the big power outlier. And then when they do, I think we're going to see these buffs be even more impactful, right? Like I think the buff is okay right now. Or it's like it was also been kind of good because like opponents are playing Cosmo, so it gives me like a free Sentry lane, and I know I can't get Shang-Chi there. Or the other thing about Sentry is if you just fill the right lane, there isn't a downside. And I've had that be relevant a few times where it's like I'm only like 1 or 2 cards away from filling the lane at the end of the game, and so I just like throw a demon there, and then I can just play a 3/10 or a 4/10, and it's pretty good.
4/10 without downside, good. So happy to see some buffs. They were really not expected. 2 good buff candidates because they had the bad. But some exciting news, and I think that, with all of the dour news that we had, Kitty Pryde, this balance change with Red Skull only getting a light tap, et cetera, I think that this is the good news story of the last 2 weeks, which is a little bit of an update on our balance future, right? So the balance philosophy evolving as the game does. Quite a bit was written on the Discord, so I'll do my best to read it very quickly, and then interested in hearing your thoughts if you believe, as I do, that this is a very welcome and exciting announcement. So, as part of our balance announcement, Second Dinner also shared some thoughts about their approach to balance in the future, at least some experimentation through May. So I should note that they're looking at kind of time boxing this in case it has unintended results. So they wrote, speaking of changes, we're interested in trying out sorry, this was worded weirdly. Speaking of changes, we're interested in trying out. We have an exciting announcement about the future of card balance for Marvel Snap. Starting with our upcoming April patch, currently scheduled for 4/18, we'll be making weekly changes to cards in the game. Our patch every 4 weeks will continue to release on Tuesdays and include card updates as well, but the intervening weeks will feature changes going live on Thursdays via OTA, which is an acronym for over the air, which is a clientless update. We know this is just the sort of balance, attention, and prioritization that many of you have clamored for, so thanks for your passionate feedback. It's been a multi-team effort to get this process buttoned up over the last month, and we all hope you're as excited as we are. Let's go ahead and address some of the questions that should be popular. This was a weird one. Why Thursdays? Well, who cares when? But anyways, they.
Oh, it's good that it's a specific day because man, I slept through these changes, and I was in because I had no idea. Like
I tried waking you up. I tried waking you up.
It happens, but it's annoying not knowing when this stuff is going live.
You know what?
When you try and cover the news, so the fact that we know there's like a designated day rather than someday this week we're getting a change, like I think it's very. I mean, I know most people probably don't care. But
it's better than turning on the client and randomly the Sunspot now has 0 attack, and you're like, wait, what? When did that happen?
All right. Fair enough. So they like Thursdays because it's a good day to slide into the rest of our schedule, ensure our QA team has enough time to verify these updates. It also avoids stepping on new card releases or hot featured locations. Oh, that's true too, actually. It's a good point.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
What kind of changes will we make? Our OTA, again, over-the-air tool, gives us the ability to make changes within about a week or 2, but is limited in what we can change. We're continuing to develop the tool and expand its limitations, but for now you can expect weekly Thursday changes to be numbers only like the above, so probably energy and or power. With our large patches still addressing most of the major changes to card functionality and visual effects. Will we be nerfing or buffing cards? Well, as you can see with Sentry and Shadow King, we do intend to buff cards through OTA. In fact, we're going to guarantee at least one buff in each of these updates. We will also use this method to balance the metagame with nerfs, but only when it's deemed necessary. So guaranteed buffs, really cool, and optional nerfs when needed. Sounds reasonable. How many cards will change each week? Our target is 2 to 4 cards each week. That's quite a bit.
That's you're gonna buff 2 to 4 cards per week.
There are a lot of bad cards in the game, Nate.
Well, there are a lot.
Ain't that the truth?
Did say this is kind of a test thing going through May, so it's going to be over the next few weeks. But
all right,
I'm super stoked.
You notice they don't use that tagline from early launch: "All fun, no filler," except for Sentry, and Shadow King, and no,
there's still a bunch of pool 1 and pool 2 cards that are just like, I would like these cards to be better,
like Electra.
Yes.
Anyways, so 2 to 4 cards each week. On patch weeks, it's possible we'll change more, as that's a unique access point for us. How will we pick up which cards to change? We have a list of buffs and a very small list of nerfs that we're making to existing content. We're prioritizing them based on how we expect the individual changes to affect the metagame, or even combine with new cards and locations. But we'll shift them around based on the live metagame. Very encouraging that they're going to make practical decision-making based on how the game experience develops. Again, very nice to see that confirmed, and I think no one would argue that that is bad. Why not just make all those changes now? Well, one of the things we're wary with balance is how much change is too much. We've avoided changing more than a handful of cards at a time for a while now, and we think that's a good thing because they're easier to digest. Plus, pacing out these changes let us lightly freshen the metagame periodically rather than shake it up all at once, and then watch things settle into a new state of stasis. How long will we do this? We've planned a trial period for May, and depending on how it goes, we may continue. We're optimistic about that at the moment. And I think it's fair to say that we are optimistic about it as well. I think that this is a wonderful experiment that they're going to be doing. And I wish them the best of luck and success with the changes that they will be making. And excited to see other cards like Sentry go from unplayable to playable, depending on your perspective. But at least now it's a debate as opposed to before when it was ironclad.
Yeah, it's like maybe it goes from like F tier to like high C, low B or something.
It would be good to, there's so many filler cards that it would be good to have playable cards.
And we don't need filler in this game. Like, some cards, it's okay for them to be bad, and there'll always be worst cards. Like, it's, one of the strengths of Quicksilver is teaching you early on that, unlike other card games, guaranteeing you a 1-drop on 1 is not the most broken thing available in this game.
Crap, mega crap.
And so it serves cards like that existing can serve a purpose, especially in like the beginning of the game. But I think we just have too many cards that they're kind of even mid to bad when you start, and then it only gets worse as you get access to better cards. So I'm really happy about this change. I think people have really been wanting buffs a lot. I know that's one thing a lot of people, myself included, we're not really happy about with their last patch, was they nerfed all these cards, but they did it in a way where everyone knew Shuri was going to become the next top tier deck like 20 minutes after that patch came out, and to nobody's surprise, that's exactly what happened. So I'm hoping they realize they need to be a bit more proactive and being on the pulse of the metagame, because I feel like the last 2 patches, it felt like they've been kind of patching from behind, because these patches take time to get certified and get done. They're done in advance, and the problem with that is sometimes the metagame, I mean, we saw this with Thanos, right? Like, they buffed Thanos right as the Thanos deck was reaching its peak, and everyone was like, what? Why'd they do that? And it's because the patch was locked in like 2 or 3 weeks before when Thanos wasn't looking like a problem. So I'm hopeful that with these changes, they can be a bit more proactive in reacting to the live game, and then maybe that helps them be a bit more proactive with it for their full patches. Because I think that's one thing I think that's frustrated a lot of players is it feels like we get this one patch a month, and it doesn't feel like it's in response to where the game currently is. It's usually in response to where the game was like 3 weeks ago, and always being a month behind was not a good place to be for trying to balance your game.
Yeah, yeah, agreed.
But I'm really happy about these changes. I love buffs. I want more of my collection to be useful, to use some of the cool variants I've got for some cards that have not been playable for a long time. So it's a very welcome change in their philosophy, and I hope it is successful for them so that they feel like they can. I mean, I'm not saying we need that many buffs every week for forever, but like the fact that it's on the table and they're trying this out, and if it goes well, maybe it'll last longer into the future. I think it's a big win, and it is restoring some of my much degraded confidence in their ability to balance the game accordingly.
I couldn't say it better myself.
Same. I can't add anything to that. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I think more playable cards equals good. There you go.
And I think more importantly is just the just not being so behind the meta. The meta is evolving pretty quickly, and we've seen
No
those
more
knock-on
2+
effects.
months of an S tier deck, please. Like
Yeah.
Shuri's been around for forever. She wasn't S tier the whole time, but she's been good the whole time. She and Thanos were battling the throne for top tier for like a month, and now
Yeah.
we've gotten essentially like 3 more weeks of Shuri being even better than Thanos on top of that, and it, it I mean, we don't have any metrics or anything, but I would imagine part of the reason they're making this decision is because the player base, I mean, you can see it on the official Discord with the amount of little downvote symbol and clown emoji reactions that have been flying around to some of the responses and questions. It's people that last patch was the first patch I've seen where it was received way more negatively than positively. It wasn't just a small, I mean, I don't think it was just a small minority. I feel like most of the people I talked to who were engaged with the game were not happy with the patch for one reason or another. And I don't think that was really the case with prior patches. Like, yeah, you're never going to make everybody happy with the patch and do things, everyone wants to be done. But for the most part, I think before that, they had a pretty clean patch record. And I really felt that they understood the importance of balancing their game when they made that whole detailed post about nerfing Surfer and Zabu and how they understand the importance of like, hey, yeah, we know we're nerfing pass cards, and like they gave a lot more reasoning and transparency in the statement they released about that than I'm used to getting from most other card games. Most other card games, it's kind of just like, yeah, this was way too good, so we're knocking it down, and that's about it. But they were like, no, we understand, we don't want people to feel like we're gonna print these overpowered cards and then nerf them right away, and because you're paying money for this, and so that inspired a lot of confidence. And then the last balance update did like everything it could to unravel that confidence I had in their balancing, because some of those changes were just so strange. Like you buff Red Skull, you nerf Arrow in a way where she can't counter like the Taskmaster +1 drop. Like it was just, I mean, and the sentiment was pretty much the same across. I think like almost every content creator was just like, what were they thinking? Like, are we playing the same game? So hopefully with these more proactive OTA things and whatnot, they can kind of adjust things more accordingly.
Well, I think that about gets to the end of our topics. I will say that as this is twice monthly, our next scheduled recording date is on the 22nd. And by then, the new patch should be live, so we should know what the Shuri change will be, and we'll certainly be
It's gonna
having
be the 18th
conversations.
for anyone who hasn't seen, and that'll also be series drops. So we'll probably talk about that next time, as well as like something we didn't cover this time, which is the new cards that have been dropping or will be dropping this month in April.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's some cool ones. So, and then obviously the patch, we get to see how they change Shuri. We'll have had, a good 5 days or so to like try out the patch, see kind of, what's happening. And I'm looking forward to it. I think it's my hope. I mean, well, I don't want to say it can't get any worse than it is, but I said that during the Zabu season, so I'm just gonna shut my mouth.
And will Kitty come back?
I
That is
know.
the
Oh
question,
God, if they
right?
miss Kitty on the main patch,
Yeah.
they're gonna be
I'm
rioting in the
hoping
streets.
We
I'm
need
hoping
a.
that next patch will be next podcast will be a little bit more positive than this one was. Although I am happy we got to end on a bit of a hopeful note.
We need a parody song instead of "Baby Come Back." It's "Kitty Come Back."
Yeah.
Well, you have a lot of experience in that range, Nate. So I'll
Oh no!
delegate that
Oh
to
no!
you. Maybe we can get Craig to commission to Craig, because he certainly was the talent for parody songs. Before we do wrap the podcast portion of the stream, any socials y'all want to share, announcements of upcoming content, that sort of thing? Zombies, I will start with you.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm still doing the full-time content creation thing, focusing on Marvel Snap, doing a daily video pretty much every day over on YouTube, trying to get back into the swing of things with more regular streams as well. So you can find me over on YouTube, the same name you see on screen here, ZombiesGoNomNom. Same with Twitter. I do quite a bit of tweeting over there. I was posting a daily Shuri meme every day until the deck got nerfed. So you've got about 16 or 17 of those you can catch up on if you want some laughs. And then over on Twitch, it's Zombies with a Z, Go Nom Nom. And yeah, trying to get more into the swing of things. Also, nothing's confirmed yet, but there's a chance I might be doing some work with Marvel Snap Zone on their YouTube stuff in the future. So that would be really cool because I really like the stuff they do. Friend of the channel, friend of the podcast, Safety Blade does some great work for them, and they just have a really great team together. And I really enjoy the type of stuff they do, so it'd be really cool to be a part of that. So here's hoping.
Oh, very cool. Well, I'll jump in now as well. You can find me on Twitter at NateWolfeTCG. It's NateWolfeTCG. I'm pretty active on more so Hearthstone than Snap, although I probably play more Snap than I do Hearthstone. At this point, we do a wild exclusive Hearthstone podcast here every Friday evening called Born to be Wild, which is where we kind of jokingly got the name for Born to be Cosmo. But yeah, I'm just excited to be here. Follow Zombies for all the content. I just do this for fun. I do have a request, Zombies. If you get around to it, I love the lore YouTube videos.
Yeah, so that's on my docket tomorrow. I'm gonna be working on the wave one. I wanted to get it out before the end of March, but it just wasn't in the cards. But I really want to do more.
I will say, like,
they're so fun.
While I think that Sentry makes like a really crap card, it would make a really good lore episode.
Yeah, he would be a good one for sure.
The story there is very unique and interesting. There's a lot there. But anyways, that's me, and I really just enjoy hanging out with you guys. So thanks for having me. Blue, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter, twitter.com/Blutrane, BLUTRANE. Also linked the Born to be Cosmo Twitter. You should follow that as well. Twitter.com, Born to be Cosmo, spelled as it sounds. There is a link to the YouTube channel where we post this episode to, usually a day or two after this has aired. And we are also available on your favorite podcasting app if you prefer to listen while you're working out or commuting or doing things that life often demands of us. We're on Apple, Spotify, and Anchor, so you can find us there as well. I want to thank everyone who hung out with us here in chat, and or who is listening to this after we've posted the recording. We will be back on April 22nd, where we'll be talking about the events relevant to that date, patch, nerfs, Kitty, maybe. So look forward to seeing y'all then. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening or day, depending on where you are. Catch you next time.
Enough said, bub.
I love that.